So, Real Architecture Workshop. This was an intense design build experience that helped build my knowledge in architecture and how to design with construction in mind. Um, as you can see, process is highlighted here because that's another theme. Prior to my last year at Auburn, I was walking the halls at Dudley and saw this flyer for Real Architecture Workshop, a 2-week design build charrette in South Dakota. No idea really how we were going to do that, but decided to sign on and join this thing. So in school, all through design, the first 4 years of school, we were drawing a lot of projects. Never really, a lot of conceptual designs, creative solutions, but never really knowing how those things would come together and how they would actually be built. So jumped ahead to South Dakota, place where we were going to do it in 2 weeks. The location of the workshop was in the Black Hills of South Dakota, 2 miles south of Custer. This is the site that you can see in the image. The ranch was a forest, an area with like forests of ponderosa pine and a lot of rock outcroppings. Paul Neeseth at the top left founded this program, and this was the pilot, the first iteration of it for the workshop. His 3 associates below him were kind of team leaders, teachers in some form or fashion, and then there were 4 students, including myself, that signed up and flew out to South Dakota for architecture students. The prompt for the project was to build an abode. We were camped out at a base camp on the site for 2 weeks, and the client really wanted to build a structure in the woods on this cliff that would be a shelter or a satellite location for camping out on site, place to show people during happy hour. It was a pretty immersive experience. We met with a local geologist, Native American, local to the area, and a local miner, and they really described the process or the Black Hills to us, the history, the geology. We did design charrettes in the tent late at night. The biggest challenge with this all was how are we going to balance, what we want to try to design for this prompt of an abode versus the time that we have, and how can we integrate this structure into the nature without, overpowering the natural beauty of the site. We go into the site, we are crawling, climbing, using hands and feet to kind of balance on the site. And we were trying to build on top of these rock blades, but wanted the structure to be somewhat nestled, but perched on top of these rocks. But it's still a very complex site with a challenging topography. We talked about the different experiences we wanted to create as you're approaching the site, the feeling of security and shelter, but also of essentially juxtaposition of the shape of the rocks and the form of the rocks and views pointing outward. We had a pretty simple material palette to work from, a big stack of rough sawn ponderosa pine, sheet metal roofing, bags of concrete, and a series of connections, bolts, nuts, and screws to work with for the design. And we took turns each day among the 4 students being like a team leader. We had a scribe, and then we had, kind of the worker bees of the group in order to kind of develop that set of skills. Here we are doing a mock-up of the structure on top of the kind of rock cliff there. Then every bit of material that we used on site, we had to like haul up this mountain. It was pretty, challenging at first. We got more used to it. And we made some minor impacts to the rock to allow this structure and foundation to be really nestled into the rock. The foundation itself was probably the more challenging of it all. Like, it was a very difficult rocky site with a cliff off the far edge there. So we epoxied some rebar into the side of the rock and built these concrete forms for the foundation and started building from there up. The rest of the structure came together pretty quickly after this foundation. We used kind of a traditional, we were inspired by traditional Japanese architecture, post and beam sort of a structure, going between stacked wood girders in one direction, joists, decking, and then your columns, girders, joist, roofing. So that was the kind of primary structure. We also used a Japanese process called shugiban. I probably pronounced that wrong, where you're essentially caramelizing the outside of the wood. And we use this for the exterior skin of the building. It helps protect it from water and bugs and preserve the wood and gives it this kind of cool black texture. The building itself was intended to be more opaque and more sheltered at the rear portion of the site, and then very open towards the outer portion. You can see a detail that we focused on here was lowering the handrail down a little bit further so that when you're in a seated position, you could see out at the view beyond. During the 2 weeks there, we had opportunities and options to go horseback riding, rock climbing. They built all these things into the program, but we all skipped it in order to kind of finish this project on time. 2 weeks was such a short amount of time to really come together, design, and build. We had to have a really realistic expectations on what we could do. Here's a shot showing kind of the stacking of the wood and how it all came together. It was a great opportunity for me to kind of learn how to build, how to design something that's feasible to build, and then it kind of gives the unique detailing, creates a really unique project at the end. 7 years later, went back out for a raw union, where we completed the 10th raw project, and it was an awesome time, awesome experience. I got to take some drone shots of the abode on top of the cliff here, and was really just, it's been an instrumental thing in my uh, architecture career, kind of learning to build in that way. So that's the end.